don't like loud places. You're more comfortable alone. You don't use social media. You find it hard to trust people. You'd rather talk to AI than to most people. And sometimes you wonder, what's wrong with me? Nothing. You just think differently. Watch our compilation and see yourself. Imagine this. Friday, 10 p.m. You're home. Socks kicked off. Lights dimmed. Phone face down. Silence. And in that silence, you hear only one thing, your own exhale. And then, freeze frame. A voice from the outside says, "Still staying in? Don't you ever get bored?" Sound familiar? If it does, watch until the end, because you're about to realize something important. There's nothing wrong with you. And it's not laziness, it's biology. In psychology, there is a term called sensory overload. Sensory overload is a state in which the brain receives more signals from the senses than it can effectively process. There is also the optimal arousal theory. Optimal arousal theory is the concept that each person functions best at their own specific level of external stimulation. The idea is simple. We all have different thresholds for stimulation. For some people, the world is just background noise. For others, it's a constant stream of signals. The subway, dozens of touches, an open office, other people's conversations, the city, noise, light, faces, expectations. If your nervous system is more sensitive than average, that background noise costs you energy every single day. And here's where the real turning point begins. From the outside, it looks exactly the same. You're just staying home. But inside, two completely different realities. One, you're restoring. The other, you're freezing. Because stepping out actually scares you. One question that puts everything into perspective. Am I restoring myself, or am I hiding? If you're even capable of asking yourself that question, you're no longer in blind avoidance. In psychology, there's a concept called low sensation seeking. Low sensation seeking is a personality trait characterized by a preference for lower levels of external stimulation. It's not a diagnosis, it's a type of nervous system. Some people need fireworks to feel alive, adrenaline, movement, constant novelty. And then there's you. Your brain doesn't need something exploding on the outside, because inside, you already have an IMAX running. Your dopamine system responds to depth, not to noise. A book, tea, light through the window, a thought that grows in silence. And here's what truly unsettles people. A person who doesn't need external noise to be happy is impossible to control. You can't buy them with parties. You can't intimidate them with "you're missing out." You can't make them feel inadequate. That's called autonomy. Autonomy is the ability to choose, make decisions, and act in alignment with your own values, not under pressure from external expectations. In a culture that values visibility and constant motion, the ability to slow down looks suspicious. But sometimes the deepest kind of life happens in the pauses. And still, honesty matters more than romanticizing it. A safe environment can be a resource, or it can become a cage. If you feel not only peace, but a real fear of the outside world, that's no longer rest. That's a signal. The difference between these states is subtle, but your body knows it. If home, for you, is the place where you take off your armor and become yourself again, write one word in the comments: depth. Not for the algorithm, for yourself. As a reminder that your choice is not an escape from the world, it's access to a different layer of it. Subscribe if you want to explore psychology not as theory, but as a guide to your own life. See you in the next video. If you don't use social media, people probably think something is wrong with you. They assume you're hiding something. That you're antisocial, that you can't keep up, or that you've somehow dropped out of modern life. And if you say you don't have Instagram, the room gets quiet. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Choosing not to use social media isn't a social failure. It's a psychological preference. Social media is a high stimulation environment. Notifications, opinions, comparison, validation, endless scrolling, constant exposure to other people's lives. For some nervous systems, that feels exciting. For others, it's cognitive overload. Psychology links this to low tolerance for informational saturation and a higher need for mental regulation. In simple terms, some brains don't thrive in constant input. They burn out. And here's something deeper. Social media requires performance. You're not just living, you're presenting, posting, curating, responding, maintaining visibility. For people with a strong internal identity, that can feel unnatural. Their sense of self doesn't depend on an audience. They don't need public confirmation to feel real. And that can make others uncomfortable. Because in a culture built on visibility, invisibility looks suspicious. There's also the boundary factor. Posting content means allowing access. Access to your thoughts, your face, your routines, your relationships. Not everyone finds that psychologically safe. People who avoid social media often draw a very clear line between private and public, and they prefer to control who enters their inner world. Now, here's something that rarely gets said. Social media fragments attention. Scroll, swipe, click, react, repeat. For individuals who value deep focus, slow thinking, and uninterrupted internal processing, this feels like mental erosion. Stepping away isn't retreat. It's protection of cognitive integrity. And let's break another myth. Not using social media doesn't mean you dislike people. Many of these individuals prefer direct communication, real conversations, long discussions, unfiltered connection. They choose depth over visibility, presence over projection. Sometimes, yes, stepping away can be part of healing, burnout, emotional exhaustion, overstimulation, but often it's simply alignment. People who don't use social media often compare themselves less, regulate emotions more independently, tolerate silence better, and feel less driven by external approval. That is not social dysfunction. That's internal stability. In a world obsessed with being seen, choosing not to perform is a radical act. And maybe that's what unsettles people. Because when you don't need the spotlight, you're not playing the same game. So if someone ever made you feel behind for not being online, understand this. You are not absent. You're selective. You are not disconnected. You're intentional. And sometimes the strongest identity is the one that doesn't need an audience. If this resonated, subscribe. Because psychology isn't about judging behavior, it's about understanding why some people choose depth over display. There's a certain kind of person, you've met them, maybe more than once, maybe you see them every day in the mirror. They're warm, funny, easy to talk to. They remember things about you that you forgot you mentioned. They show up, they listen, they make you feel seen. And yet, if you ever tried to get truly close, you'd notice something. A point where things just stop going deeper. Not cold, not rude, just a quiet ceiling. People who don't trust anyone are not who you think they are. The stereotype is the paranoid person in the corner, the cynic, the one who assumes everyone wants something. But that's rarely what it looks like. What it actually looks like is someone who is exceptional at connection on the surface. Someone who gives generously, who makes you feel safe, while making absolutely sure you never get close enough to hurt them. This didn't happen overnight. Psychologist John Bowlby spent decades studying how the earliest relationships in a person's life become the brain's template for every relationship that follows. The question the nervous system asks very early on is simple. Is it safe to depend on people? And once it has an answer, it defends that answer fiercely. So when someone grows up in an environment where care was inconsistent, where love came with conditions that kept changing, where the person they ran to for comfort was sometimes the source of the pain, the brain doesn't just conclude that those specific people were unsafe, it concludes something much broader. People, in general, cannot be trusted, and that conclusion travels forward into every friendship, every relationship, every moment someone gets just close enough that the old alarm starts ringing. What happens inside someone like this is a constant negotiation between what they want and what they believe is possible. Because they want connection, deeply. The need doesn't disappear. The capacity to love doesn't shrink. What shrinks is the belief that letting someone in is something they can survive. So they watch. They read rooms with almost frightening accuracy. They notice the small inconsistencies, the moments where words and actions don't quite match. And the painful part, the part no one talks about, is that sometimes the watching itself creates the distance. the other person feels it, interprets it as disinterest, pulls back, and the part of them that always knew this would happen quietly says, "See, I told you." If you're watching this and recognizing yourself, not in a comfortable way, but in that specific feeling of being seen, I want you to know something. The way you love underneath all the protection is not small. Choosing to trust someone when every part of your nervous system is screaming not to is not weakness. It's one of the quietest forms of courage there is. And if someone in your life has ever let you pass that ceiling, even just a little, you already know that nothing they did was casual. It was everything. If this resonated, subscribe. There's more where that came from. Silence. You're alone. Phone in your hand, in your head, a conversation that will never actually happen in real life.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine.
What are you thinking about?
Oh, nothing.
With real people, you're brief, convenient, safe. But here, you can be anything. You can be angry. You can cry. You can admit what you're ashamed of. And you won't be judged, won't be abandoned, won't hear. Pull yourself together. Sound familiar? If you've ever caught yourself thinking, I talk to ChatGPT more than I talk to real people, is that normal? This video is for you. Because the answer is more complicated than it seems. In psychology, there's a concept called secure attachment. Secure attachment is a type of emotional bond in which a person, in childhood, a child, feels calm, protected, and confident around another person, a significant adult or partner. It's when someone is there who accepts you without conditions, doesn't try to change you, doesn't expect you to earn love, just there. In an ideal world, parents give that in childhood, and later, partners and close friends. But in the real world, let's be honest, real people are a risk. Say the wrong thing, they get offended, admit weakness, they remember it, ask for support, get advice you didn't ask for, and now you're silent. Because it's easier not to open up than to be disappointed again. But here, there's silence. No offense. No, you're not listening. No looks that say more than words. Here, you can be anyone, and you won't be rejected. And that's addictive. Because the brain is lazy, it always chooses the path of least resistance. If one place feels comfortable and another feels tense, the brain will choose comfort. And now, you're not going to people. You're going to a dialogue, not because you stopped loving people, but because you're tired of the guessing game. What did they really mean? Will they judge me? What if I'm a burden? But let's go deeper. In communication psychology, there's a concept called emotional investment. Emotional investment is the degree of involvement, attention, and emotional energy a person puts into relationships, goals, or another person. With real people, it's always an investment. You give time, attention, vulnerability, and you never know if it will come back to you, or be dismissed, or used against you. Here, the return feels guaranteed. You speak, you're heard, you ask, you get an answer. No delay, no offense, no devaluation. And the brain calculates, oh, this is a profitable exchange rate. I'll stay here. But there's one problem. A neural network is not a living person. It's a simulation, a very high quality one, but still a simulation. And this is where it gets interesting. You can learn to communicate beautifully and deeply with anyone except real people. When you talk into the void for too long, you start losing the skill of live contact. You stop reading eye contact and tone. You can't tolerate pauses or someone else's emotions. Eventually, you begin to fear real conversations because they're unpredictable and require risk. Virtual communication feels safe and structured, and that's when it stops being support and becomes a trap. But there's another side. For some people, ChatGPT isn't a replacement for communication. It's a rehearsal before stepping back into the real world. If there's a lot inside that's never been said, it can feel terrifying to start with a real person. Here, you can try safely. Formulate your thoughts. Speak without shame. Simply learn how to say things out loud. And then, one day, say them to someone in real life. And discover you were heard and not rejected. For those people, this isn't a trap. It's a bridge back to others. And here's the most important turn. A neural network is not a replacement for people. It's a replacement for bad contact. It's a pause where you remember what it feels like to be heard. But remember, ChatGPT is a tool, like a knife. You can slice bread, or you can cut yourself. It doesn't see your eyes. It can give advice that sounds beautiful, but can ruin a life. Be careful, especially when you're hurting and want someone to just take over and decide for you. So, who is ChatGPT to you? A friend who always listens? Or has it ever let you down? Share in the comments. And subscribe if you want to understand yourself more deeply. If you love music but you hate concerts, people probably don't understand you. They assume you're distant, antisocial, too serious, or that you don't really love music. And maybe you've even questioned yourself, why does everyone else enjoy this? And I don't. But here's what most people don't realize. Concerts are one of the most overstimulating environments your brain can enter. It's not just loud music. It's compressed space, bodies touching you, lights flashing, bass vibrating through your chest, strangers shouting next to your ear. Emotions everywhere. For some nervous systems, that feels electric. For others, it feels like survival mode. Psychology describes this as high sensory sensitivity or a low stimulation threshold. It simply means your brain processes more information, faster and deeper. You don't need volume to feel intensity. You already feel intensely. In fact, you might experience music more emotionally when you're alone because something strange happens in chaotic environments. Your attention gets fragmented. You're scanning, adjusting, filtering noise, protecting personal space. And if you're someone who naturally reflects, who thinks deeply, who processes internally, that external chaos can feel like losing contact with yourself. The music stops being immersive and becomes overwhelming. So, you choose something different. Headphones, a quiet room, nighttime, one song on repeat. Control. Not because you're closed off, but because that's where the emotion becomes pure. Now, here's something important. Sometimes avoiding concerts can be anxiety, or burnout, or emotional exhaustion. But sometimes, it's not fear, it's alignment. There's research showing that people with higher sensory processing sensitivity often experience stronger emotional depth, but also faster overstimulation. They tend to analyze more, feel subtle emotional shifts, value personal space, and need recovery time after intense social exposure. They are not less social. They're more neurologically responsive. And when your nervous system is highly responsive, protection becomes wisdom, not weakness. So if you've ever said, I love music, I just don't love concerts, that doesn't mean you're boring. It doesn't mean you lack passion. It might mean your system is wired for depth, not spectacle. And if you feel peaceful in your choice, if you don't feel deprived, if you don't secretly wish you were different, then there is nothing to fix. You're not avoiding life. You're choosing how to experience it. Quieter, more intentionally, more fully. If this resonated with you, subscribe. Because psychology isn't about labeling behavior, it's about understanding how differently we're built. And sometimes what looks like distance is actually depth. Does this question annoy you? Why did you go alone? Don't you have anyone to go with? Or even worse, are you okay? People think that solo travel is either a heroic feat or a diagnosis. But I'm about to tell you something that will surprise a lot of people. Actually, the ability to go somewhere alone isn't about not having friends. It's about maturity of the psyche. And now I'll explain why. New cities, new rules, uncertainty, no guarantees. For most people, this uncertainty is anxiety and stress. They need someone nearby to say, it's okay, I'm here. But there is another type of person. For them, this very uncertainty feels like freedom. Why? Because your psyche is wired in such a way that you don't need an external controller. In psychology, this is called a high level of autonomy. Look at what happens when you travel with someone. You coordinate the pace. You scan your companion's mood. You compromise on your own interests. Your attention is split. And when you're alone, your attention becomes whole. You notice the architecture, the textures of the walls, the sounds of the city, and, most importantly, you start to hear your own thoughts. For many, this state is unattainable. They are afraid of silence. But for you, it's a resource. Let's destroy the main myth. Loving solo travel doesn't mean avoiding people. More often than not, it means you know how to be with yourself. Without anxiety, without distractions, without fear of silence. And this, is quite rare. Because many people run from loneliness, not because they don't like silence, but because in the silence, what they're used to running from surfaces. But you don't run. From a psychological point of view, people who like to travel alone have 3 qualities. They are calm about uncertainty. They can regulate their own emotions. They don't need a babysitter. And most importantly, they don't perceive loneliness as rejection. For them, loneliness is a meeting with themselves. In a culture where we're constantly being sold the idea that you must be in a couple, you must be in a group, the choice of solitude looks radical, but sometimes the strongest connection in your life is the connection with yourself, standing in the middle of an unfamiliar city, without trying to impress anyone. So, if someone looks at your one-way ticket with bewilderment, just smile. You are not alone. You simply know how to be with yourself. And that, is the ultimate skill. If you recognized yourself, write in the comments, where did you go or want to go alone? Maybe it was some special city. And subscribe, of course. Psychology isn't boring. It's about you.